education rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
When black students are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Defend!
Diversity!
Defend!
Diversity!
Welcome back. Those were heated protests outside the Supreme Court after their landmark decision banning affirmative action in college admissions. Well, now we're going to bring some of that heat into our studios. Joining me today, Joy White, attorney and former general counsel for Morehouse College, and CJ Pearson, PragerU personality. Good to have you both here. Let's dive right into this conversation. CJ, I want to start with you because you have said that you support the ruling, the Supreme Court's ruling, because you're tired of blackness being treated as a disability. What do you mean by that?
You know, exactly what I tweeted. I believe that this ruling actually is a great equalizer between people of color and those in the white community. You know, I don't need people to look at me and feel bad for me because of the color of my skin. My blackness has never been something that's held me back. And to be quite frank, this ruling just makes it clear that blackness no longer needs to be the thing that opens a door. I don't need my skin color to open doors for me in this world. My work ethic will, my ambition will, my drive and passion will. And so I think that's a great interpretation by these justices, and I applaud them for their decision.
Well, but some would argue that if you're not opening doors, black people are going to be faced with a closed door. So, Joy, we have seen this happen in California because there are states that have already banned affirmative action. And in the 10 years after that took place, enrollment at UCLA, my alma mater, for black students dropped over 50%. So we see the challenges that we are likely to face in the rest of the country. So if race can no longer be considered as a factor, how do we then ensure that black students still have opportunities in higher education?
Well, I think one of the things is to look at all the options for higher education, not just these elite PWIs. I mean, I think I certainly do not agree with the ruling, and at the same time, I think that there are a lot of other options, and there have always been other options, including HBCUs, community colleges. And so I think that, you know, for institutions that are going to use this as a way to not welcome black students, that is not an environment where those students would have been treated well to begin with. And I think schools that want black students there will still have black students there.
CJ, I'm curious your thoughts on one of the other considerations, a form of affirmative action some would argue that is still allowed, which is legacy, that if you are the child or the grandchild of an alumni, you can still get some preferential treatment in admissions. What are your thoughts on legacy admissions?
You know, I'm pretty consistent on this issue. I think that we should be moving all of our admissions into a more merit-based system, and that includes legacy admissions. I don't think that you should be able to buy your way into a university or college, nor do I think that your father or mother's accomplishments should be the only reason that you're admitted as well.
But when you talk about a merit-based system, and we see numbers like what we saw at UCLA with a 50% drop within 10 years, do you believe that the students who had been admitted prior, the black students, which include me, were only there in part because they're black?
Well, not only there because they are black, but if there was such a stark drop, then I think it does beg the question, were there a large amount of people who were admitted just because they were black? And I think when you examine that question, I think that for me, I don't want to be in any space, you know, as Joy said, that is only welcoming me there because I am black. I don't want my admittance into a prestigious institution like UCLA or Harvard or Yale to have an asterisk beside it just because people will always wonder for all of my days whether or not I got into that institution simply because of the color of my skin. I think black children deserve more than having their qualifications questioned due to a system that they themselves did not even really ask for.
Joy, let's talk about this beyond the classroom, because we can expect to see the effects of this ruling in ways that affect far more than colleges and universities. How do you think this ruling is going to affect society at large beyond the classroom?
Well, I think it's certainly going to impact employment. And so I think to the extent that you have fewer people that are able to go to graduate school, particularly, where I think this is going to probably have the biggest impact is when we're talking about law school, medical school, MBA, like that's where you have fewer options. I mean, there's only so many schools that offer that. And so if there are fewer people that are able to go there, then they're not going to have the degrees to go into the job force.
Let's talk about this court, this Supreme Court, because now we have this conservative supermajority. We saw that in the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We see that now with affirmative action. A lot of people are wondering what else is coming down the line. What do you expect us to see challenged in the years to come?
Unfortunately, I am concerned about same-sex marriage. because Justice Thomas has specifically referenced that as, let's go look at that now. Also for same-sex individuals to have sex. So sodomy in many states was illegal and was criminalized. So there was a decision in 2003 that prevented that from being criminalized. I think they may go back and look at that. He specifically referenced that as well. And then there's an older case around the ability for a married couple to use contraception. He specifically named all three of those cases and those rulings as something that maybe need to be revisited.
Now, CJ, when it comes to the court and the makeup of the court, you've kind of painted the left as sore losers, saying, people are only upset about these rulings because they haven't gone the way that they wanted them to. But when we look at public opinion on the court, approval of the Supreme Court is at its lowest level ever. And I mean, this is kind of new for them to have these low levels of approval. What does that tell you about what the country thinks about what they're seeing right now?
Well, first and foremost, it's not the job of the Supreme Court to be well-liked. It's not their job to have high approval ratings. It's their job to decide whether or not these cases are constitutionally sound or not. But to go back to a point that Joy made, citing comments made by Justice Thomas, I think it's important to note that he is just one justice on this court. And all of those scenarios that she cited are just scenarios. They're hypotheticals. And also, too, I think it's really important to note that the Supreme Court has a history of overturning precedent. If it weren't for the overturning of the Dred Scott decision, we would still be drinking out of black and white water fountains. And so I think the court is absolutely free to reevaluate decisions that they have previously made to ensure that it was made on a constitutionally sound basis.
I fundamentally disagree. This is not sound behavior from the Supreme Court. They have not properly relied on precedent. They have just changed their minds based on the political appointments that are there. We are not a colorblind society. And so it's very disingenuous to say that, like to put that in the order and say, we don't need this. It's just, the Supreme Court should not behave this way. Most attorneys, most individuals that are members of the bar do not agree with this behavior unless it's a political reason. So I think the concern is they are not relying on precedent in the way that they should rely on precedent.
And I think that it's important to give a little bit of leeway to stray from precedent because, again, going back to that Dred Scott decision, I don't think that there is anyone who believes, or at least that we would probably agree with, that Brown v. Board of Education should not have overturned that decision. And it rightfully did, and I'm proud of it. I think that we've all been the benefit of that decision to stray away from precedent.
All right, we're going to have to leave it at that. Joy White, CJ Pearson, appreciate you both so much for being here. That was a great conversation. Now, when we come back, we are going to switch gears. Cancer-causing chemicals, could they be in your beauty routine? Are relaxers killing Black women?